Alright guys, we're about to make some beef stew. So for this recipe, you're going to need some beef. I chose to use chuck. You're going to also need some potatoes. I'm using about 5 Yukon Gold potatoes, aka white potatoes. Some celery, a white onion, this is a half a white onion. Some carrots, tomato bouillon, tomato paste, beef broth, Creole seasoning, garlic powder, onion powder, and of course black pepper. And that is all you need. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so we have our chuck cubed. I'm going to go ahead and just throw in a little bit of olive oil so that the seasonings can stick. Now I'm just going to take my spoon, mix it up on the meat so I can make sure that all of the seasonings stick. I'm going to take some of my Creole seasoning, sprinkle that on top. I take my onion powder, my garlic powder, and lastly my black pepper. Now we're going to go ahead and just mix that in. Okay, we have our seasonings mixed in. Every piece is coated. I'm going to take some flour and I'm going to sprinkle it on top like that. Try not to be too messy. And then I'm going to toss the beef in the flour, making sure that every piece is coated like this. And I'm going to need a little bit more, so I'll sprinkle just a tad bit. That should be enough. I'm going to keep tossing it. Alright, so as you can see, every piece is coated with the flour and the seasonings. Now we're going to go ahead and head over to the stove so we can go ahead and sear every piece. See you at the stove. Okay, so I have a Dutch oven pot, but use whatever pot you have. It's pretty big. I have some oil heating up in the pan. What we're going to do is take each piece of meat and just put it at the bottom of the pan. It's hot, guys. You just can't hear it. Let me turn up the heat just a little bit. I have it on medium high, but you probably want to cook it on high because you want to get it seared. So you're going to just go ahead and put in your pieces, and you want to be able to see the bottom of the pot, so you don't want to crowd the pot. So in between each piece you want to be able to see the bottom, because if not, you're going to be steaming your pieces of meat instead of actually searing them. So as you can see, I'm just selectively placing them in the bottom of the pot. And you might have to do 2 batches. I'm thinking that's what I'm going to have to do because I have enough meat. So I'm just making sure I can still see the bottom. Alright, so as you can see, in the pot, you can see how I have it separated. It's not touching. I'm going to flip it on each side, therefore it gets a nice sear. And then I have this amount left over, so we're going to work in 2 batches. Let's go. Okay, I have removed my meat, set it aside. It's all seared. Now what we're gonna do in the same pot, we're gonna just toss in our onions. And we're gonna allow our onions to caramelize just a little bit. I didn't put any oil or anything in there because we already had oil from when we were cooking our beef. So I'm just going to continuously stirring. And we're gonna add a little bit of pepper and Creole seasoning because that's my favorite substitute over salt. Adding in the pepper. Adding in my sodium of choice, which is Creole. You can use regular salt if you like. I just like the taste of Creole seasoning. And like I said, I'm just gonna stir it until it caramelizes just a little bit. Don't worry about the dark bits at the bottom. We're going to deglaze the pan in a minute. Okay, so at this point, I have the onions where I want them to be, right here in this stage. I'm going to take 2 scoops of tomato paste. And I'm just going to plop that in the pot, like that. I'm going to give it a stir. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is sprinkle a little of flour in the dish. It's going to be about a tablespoon and a half. Like this. And what this is going to do for us, it's going to thicken our how do I put it? I guess you want to say the broth. It's going to thicken it so that you're not eating soup, you're actually eating stew. So I'm just letting some of the raw flavor just flour cook out, and then we're going to work on deglazing this pan. All right. So as you can see, it's pretty thick. It can be thinner. It's thick, trust me. I'm gonna take our beef stock or our beef broth. You can use stock or broth. I'm using broth. And you can also use red wine for this, but we're just gonna pour some of it in. And we're gonna scrape the bottom so that we can deglaze it. Because everything that's at the bottom is not burnt. That's flavor, and you want that in your stew. So it's going to be amazing. So again, I'm just deglazing it, allowing it to lift from the bottom of the pan, making sure that flavor is incorporated. I'm going to pour some more broth in there as soon as I finish deglazing the bottom. But as you can see, it's getting that beef stew color at this point. See, when I pull it back, you're seeing white, the white bottom again. You're not seeing the black stuff because I'm removing it. So good. Alright, you see how it's thick? That's because we need some more broth. Because we're gonna turn our stove on medium low, and we're going to allow the beef to simmer for about an hour. And at this time, you can prepare your vegetables, your carrots, your celery, your potatoes. You can prepare that. Mine is already prepared, but you can do that because you have an hour until you can add those other vegetables. So I'm going to use about a carton and a half. So this is a 32 ounce, 2 pounds. So I'm using basically two and a half pounds of beef broth. I'm just making sure I'm putting enough. There we go. I have used it all, I think. Yeah, a little bit in there. There we go. Now I used it all. And at this point, I'm going to make sure my spoon is clean from all the extra particles. And now we're going to toss our beef back in the pot with all of that juice. And we're going to put, sorry guys, I dropped the spoon, but we're going to put the top back on. And we're going to let that simmer for an hour. So I'll see you guys in an hour. Okay, so the beef stew has been going for about 1 hour. I'm just going to look at it. Everything looks good. It's a little watery, but it's going to thicken up, guys. Don't worry. It's going to thicken up. And in the meantime, if it doesn't get to your consistency, always use cornstarch and water. So right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to toss in my potatoes. I'm going to toss in the carrots. They're already peeled and washed. I like using those type of carrots because I don't have to do anything. So I'm just going to use as many as I would like. I like using organic vegetables just because these are the things that grow on the ground. And it's hard to wash them properly. So I would just prefer to use organic. I'm not a big fan of carrots, so I'm only going to use a little bit. Let me see how much that is. Yeah, that's enough. And then lastly, I'm going to toss in my celery. I like celery, so. And if you want to, go ahead and use peas, but I use celery instead of peas. So at this point, I am going to use our last ingredient, which is the tomato bouillon. And I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit. It gives it a lot of flavor and it helps with the color as well. There we go, that's enough. And I'm going to stir that. Yeah, it's doing exactly what I needed to do. So now that I have everything incorporated, I am going to throw this top back on like that. I'm going to let it simmer for about 35 minutes to 40 minutes. Okay, so it's been going for about 35 minutes and I'm just checking the consistency. It looks pretty good. However, look at this. See that? I think that's too watery for my liking. If you like it, good. That's all you have to do. Go ahead and plate your dinner and you're good. But me, what I'm going to do is I have a little bit of cornstarch and water mixed together. This is always a secret, guys. If any of your soups are not to the consistency that you want it, or even a cheese sauce, throw in some cornstarch and water and it's going to thicken up. But be careful because it thickens pretty fast. So as you can see, I didn't just pour all of it in there. I just put a little bit in there. I'm going to check on the consistency after it settles in there. And it's going to tell me if I need more. I can tell that it's already thickening, but I know I'm going to need some more. So, yep, it's thickening. And there you have it, guys. The beef stew is complete. This recipe was so easy, yet so tasty. So, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Bon appetit.